Okay, in today's video, we are going to be discussing origin of species and how traits are passed down through the use of phylogenetic trees. So the first thing I want you to do is kind of a warm-up bell ringer for this lesson. What characteristics could help you to infer that dinosaurs and birds come from the same lineage? So take a minute, answer this question. What about them makes them seem like they would come from the same family tree? Okay, so there's a couple things you may have noticed. For one, they do have feathers. I believe this is a new way that scientists have started to think about dinosaurs. For example, I believe this is a velociraptor or a new velociraptor. Obviously a lot different than what you remember from if you've seen Jurassic Park. But you can see that they all have feathers. So they have feather-like wings. They have tail feathers. Obviously on the velociraptor, it's a lot more pronounced than on the birds. You may have also noticed the talons. Obviously on larger birds of prey, raptors, eagles, hawks, these talons are a lot more pronounced so that they can catch things like rats and rabbits and fish. And I had a couple other people mention the eyes look kind of similar. Not the beaks, though. The birds have beaks. The raptors have jaws with teeth inside of them. But you can see kind of in this comic over here the descent of lizard-like dinosaurs to birds over time. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So what is a phylogenetic tree? Phylogenetic trees are kind of like family trees, if you've ever done one of those. They're going to represent evolutionary relationships among organisms. So typically what we'll see is we will have some sort of common ancestors down here towards the left, and that will give rise to multiple different species. You can see that we have 5 different species that we are trying to look at, and these phylogenetic trees are going to help us kind of see where they came from. So you can see we have a root. The root would be what we consider the most common ancestor, or the origin of species, and they are going to meet at this common ancestor down here. So over time there may have been some steps to get to this common ancestor through the root. But then they diverged into 2 different lineages. This first lineage on top has a common ancestor here. Those broke into 2 different species, and up here again we divided into 2 different species. But this other one, you can see that species E just diverged at this first common ancestor and kept the same traits over time, or kept evolving through the same pattern over time. There was no breaking up of species E. And what happens with this is that we are able to actually manipulate these trees. So you can see we have species W, X, Y, and Z. On this other one, we have W, Z, Y, X. And you see that all we had to do was rotate it around this branch. So we could see that maybe in the long run, all of these came from a common ancestor, but maybe we want to show that Z is closer to W than X or Y. Same thing if we want to come down here. You can see that all 4 of these, even though they have different arrangements, they still show the same patterns. They're still showing the same common ancestors, the same development, and the same breaking of species into 2 separate species. And this gives us an idea of 2 different forms of evolution that we are going to talk about: gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. Gradualism is kind of a newer idea that over time, evolution is going to occur in very small, very gradual steps. So you can see in this this butterfly over here, we have one that had both brown and yellow, yellow-orange. One of these lineages over time decided they wanted to develop more of that brown and white color. The other one chose to develop more of this orange color, maybe based on their environment. There's more orange rocks or more orange flowers, so these orange ones blend in better. This white and brown one may blend better into forest environments with the sunlight and the leaves. So based on their environment, they may have diverged into two separate species. The other one, punctuated equilibrium. Punctuated means that it is stopped. So if you're punctual, you are on time, you are right there at the right time. So punctuated equilibrium, we are going to have sudden periods of speciation and then long periods of stability. And then a new instance of speciation and then more stability. And it just keeps repeating. So you can see this in this diagram over here. So we have this original butterfly. Over time, we branched off into this first species, and that developed into that one. We had another species branch off and develop into the white one, and we had another species that kept the same traits. And you can also see this in the phylogenetic trees. One that is more gradual is going to have a lot more curves, a lot more bends to it. As the species divide over time, it's going to curve in different ways. A punctuated equilibrium phylogenetic tree is going to be much more branched and much more blocky. And this leads us into kind of defining both a cladogram and a phylogenetic tree. So phylogenetic trees show this ancestry over time. You can see that we have a couple different species here, and each one is separated by a common ancestor. Cladograms are a little more simplified in that they just show straight relationships. We can have some breaks as we move on, but you can see this one's really specific. We're focused on, I believe, jaw shape. So lampreys were one of the first organisms to develop jaws, and over time sharks got them, salmon got them, lizards got them, and each of these points, similar to our phylogenetic trees, show common ancestry. So you can trace it back to a common ancestor down here. So, based on the phylogenetic tree up above here, take a minute and figure out which of these four options best describe the common ancestor, or the relationship between the common ancestor and the other organisms. Okay. So the correct answer for this one is D. The common ancestor shares DNA with each of the other organisms. If you were to think about it in terms of gradualism and natural selection, as we move up the phylogenetic tree here, each of these different species are going to very slowly change over time. So the rhesus monkey and the baboon may be separated by only a few subtle changes, but as it adds up over time, the rhesus monkey versus the human are going to be very different in terms of their DNA. So that DNA, the changes in the sequence, the mutations that cause the change in sequence, are going to be apparent as you move up. So this rhesus monkey may have very similar DNA to the common ancestor, maybe not perfectly similar, because the traits have to be carried up, but this human will have much different DNA from the common ancestor because it's coming from a different point. Second question. So we have a gorilla, a horse, and a zebra. And you can see the amino acid sequence. So we have, for the gorilla, it's lysine, glutamic acid, histidine, and lysine. Horse is arginine, lysine, histidine, lysine. And the zebra is arginine, lysine, histidine, lysine. So based on this information, which phylogenetic tree is going to best represent the chart? Okay. The correct answer is A. So in A, you can see that we have a zebra and a horse. They have the exact same protein sequence in the chart. Each of these amino acids are going to code for the same protein. The gorilla has the same on the histidine and lysine, but different on the first two. So it may have come from a common ancestor, but it did not come from the same common ancestor that the zebra and the horse did. Third question. Based on the phylogenetic tree, which of these two organisms are least closely related? The correct answer is the rhesus monkey and the human. That is C. So again, common ancestor over here, the farthest one out, the oldest common ancestor is between the rhesus monkey and the human. The closest relative will be the chimpanzee. We actually share about 96% of our DNA is common with chimpanzees. So they are our closest relative, and the rhesus monkey is the farthest relative. And the last one, the following data shows 4 amino acids found across 3 different species. So dog, we have isoleucine, cysteine, tryptophan, serine. Monkey, we have isoleucine, cysteine, tryptophan, serine. Frog, we have methionine, cysteine, tryptophan, arginine. So based on this amino acid sequence, which phylogenetic tree best represents the information? And the correct answer for this one is C. So again, isoleucine, cysteine, tryptophan, serine. It's going to be common in the dog and the monkey, so there has to be some mammalian common ancestor there. The frog has some of these, the cysteine and the tryptophan, or the cysteine and the tryptophan are the same. The methionine and the arginine are different. So there was some sort of common ancestor, but not the closest one. So this is where I'm going to end the video for today. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.